came into their room early the next morning. Charlie smiled nervously and sat down on the edge of the bed. He was holding his present, his only present, very carefully in his 2 hands. Wonka's Whipple Scrumptious Fudge Mallow Delight, it said on the wrapper. The 4 old people, 2 at either end of the bed, propped themselves up on their pillows and stared with anxious eyes at the bar of chocolate in Charlie's hands. Mr. and Mrs. Bucket came in and stood at the foot of the bed, watching Charlie. The room became silent. Everyone was waiting now for Charlie to start opening his present. Charlie looked down at the bar of chocolate and ran his fingers slowly back and forth along the length of it, stroking it lovingly. The shiny paper wrapper made sharp, crackly noises in the quiet room. Then Mrs. Bucket said gently, "You mustn't be too disappointed, my darling, if you don't find what you're looking for beneath that wrapper. You really can't expect to be as lucky as all that." "She's quite right," Mr. Bucket said. Charlie didn't say anything. After all, Grandma Josephine said, in the whole wide world, there were only 3 tickets left to be found. "One thing to remember," Grandma Georgina said, "is whatever happens, you'll still have that bar of chocolate." "Wonka's Whipple Scrumptious Fudge Mallow Delight," cried Grandpa Joe. "It's the best of all of them. You just love it." "Yes," Charlie whispered. "I know." "Just forget about all those golden tickets and enjoy the chocolate," Grandpa Joe said. "Why don't you do that?" They all knew it was ridiculous to expect this poor little bar of chocolate to have a magic ticket inside, and they were all trying as gently and as kindly as they could to prepare Charlie for the disappointment. But there was only one other thing that the grown-ups also knew. And they knew that however small this chance of striking lucky would be, the chance was still there. The chance had to be there. This particular bar of chocolate had as much chance as having a golden ticket as any other. And that is why all the grandparents and parents in the room were actually just as tense and excited as Charlie was, although they were pretending to be very calm. "You better go ahead and open it, or you'll be late for school," Grandpa Joe said. "You might as well get it over with," Grandpa George said. "Open it, my dear," Grandma Georgina said. "Please open it. You're making me jumpy." Very slowly, Charlie's fingers began to tear open one small corner of the wrapping paper. The old people in the bed all leaned forward, craning their scraggy necks. Then suddenly, as though he couldn't bear the suspense any longer, Charlie tore the wrapper right down the middle, and on his lap there fell a light brown, creamy-coloured bar of chocolate. There was no sign of a golden ticket anywhere. "Well, that's that," said Grandpa Joe brightly. "Just what we expected." Charlie looked up. 4 kind old faces were watching him intently from the bed. He smiled at them, a small, sad smile, and he shrugged his shoulders and picked up the bar of chocolate and held it out to his mother and said, "Here, Mother, have a bit. We'll share it. I want everybody to taste it." "Certainly not," his mother said. And all the others all cried, "No, no, we wouldn't dream of it. It's all yours." "Please," begged Charlie. school, my darling, Mrs. Bucket said, putting an arm around Charlie's skinny shoulders. Come on, or you'll be late. That evening, Mr. Bucket's newspaper announced the finding of not only the third golden ticket, but the fourth as well. 2 golden tickets found today, screamed the headlines. Only 1 more left. All right, Grandpa Joe said, when the whole family gathered in the old people's bedroom after supper. Let's hear who found them. The 3rd ticket, read Mr. Bucket, holding the newspaper up close to his face because his eyes were bad and he couldn't afford glasses. The 3rd ticket was found by a Miss Violet Bogardi. There was great excitement in the Bogardi household when our reporter arrived to interview the lucky young lady. Cameras were clicking and light bulbs were flashing, and people were pushing and jostling and trying to get a bit closer to the famous girl. And the famous girl was standing in a chair in the living room, waving the golden ticket madly at arm's length, as though she were flagging a taxi. She was talking very fast and very loudly to everybody. But it was not easy to hear all she said, because she was chewing so ferociously upon a piece of gum at the same time. I'm a gum chewer normally, she shouted, but when I heard about these ticket things of Mr. Wonka's, I gave up gum and started on chocolate bars in the hope of striking lucky. Now, of course, I'm back on gum. I just adore gum. I can't do without it. I munch it all day long except for a few minutes at meal times when I take it out and stick it behind my ear for safekeeping. To tell you the truth, I simply wouldn't feel comfortable if I didn't have that little wedge of gum to chew on every moment of the day. I really wouldn't. My mother says it's not ladylike and it looks ugly to see a girl's jaws going up and down like mine do all the time, but I don't agree. And who's she to criticize anyway, because if you ask me, I'd say that her jaws are going up and down almost all the time as much as mine, just from yelling at me every minute of the day. Now, Violet, Mrs. Bogardi said in the far corner of the room, where she was standing on a piano to avoid being trampled on by the mob. All right, Mother, keep your hair on, Miss Bogardi shouted. And now, she went on, turning to the reporters again, it may interest you to know that this piece of gum I'm chewing right now at this moment is the one I've been working on for 3 months solid. That's a record, that is. It's beaten the record held by my best friend, Miss Cornelia Prince Middle. And was she furious? This is my most treasured possession now, and this piece of gum. At night time I just stick it round the end of the bedpost, and it's as good as ever in the mornings. A bit hard at first, baby, but soon I soften it up again after I've given it a few good chews. Before I started chewing for the world record, I used to change my piece of gum once a day. I used to use it in our lift on the way home from school. Why the lift? Because I like sticking the gooey piece that I'd finished on the one side of the control buttons. Then the next person who came along and pressed the control button got my old gum on the end of her finger. Ha ha, what a racket that picked up. You get the best results with women who have got expensive gloves on. Oh yes, I'm thrilled to be going to Mr. Willy Wonka's factory, and I understand that afterwards he's going to give me enough gum to last me for the rest of my whole life. Whoopee, hooray. Beastly girl, said Grandma Josephine. Despicable, said Grandma Georgina. She'll come to a sticky end one day, chewing all that gum if she doesn't. So who got the 4th golden ticket? Charlie asked. Now let me see, said Mr. Bucket, peering at the newspaper again. Oh yes, here we are. The 4th golden ticket, he read, was found by a boy named Mike TV. Another bad lot, I'll be bound, muttered Grandma Josephine. Please don't interrupt, Grandma, said Mrs. Bucket. The TV household, said Mr. Bucket, going on with his reading, was crammed like all of the others with excited visitors when our reporter arrived, but young Mike TV, our lucky winner, seemed extremely annoyed by the whole business. "Can't you fools see I'm watching television?" he said angrily. "I wish you wouldn't interrupt." The 9-year-old boy was seated before an enormous television set, with his eyes glued to the screen. He was watching a film in which one of the bunch of gangsters was shooting up another bunch of gangsters with machine guns. Mike TV himself had no less than 18 toy pistols of various sizes hanging from belts around his body. And every now and again he would leap into the air and fire off half a dozen rounds from one or another of these weapons. "Quiet," he shouted when anyone tried to ask him a question. "I didn't tell you to interrupt. This show is an absolute whiz-banger. It's terrific. I watch it every day. I watch all of them every day, even the rotten ones when there's no shooting. I like the gangsters best. They're terrific. Those gangsters, especially when they start pumping each other full of lead, or flashing old stilettos, or giving each other 1, 2, 3s with their knuckle dusters. Gosh, what I wouldn't give to be one of them doing that myself. That's the life, I tell you. It's terrific." "That's quite enough," snapped Grandma Josephine. "I can't bear to listen to it." "Not me," said Grandma Georgina. "Do all children behave like that nowadays? Like these brats we've been hearing about?" "Of course not," said Mr. Bucket, smiling at the old lady in the bed. "Some do, of course. In fact, quite a lot of them do, but not all." "And now there's only one golden ticket left," said Grandpa George. "Quite so," sniffed Grandma Georgina. "And just as sure I'll be having cabbage soup for my supper tomorrow, that ticket'll go to some nasty little beast who doesn't deserve it."